What's going on, everybody? I'm Johnny Brook. Welcome back to another Crafted Workshop video, and welcome back finally to my new shop. So in this week's video, I'm going to show you how I got all of the insulation installed in the ceiling and walls, and also how I installed these mini split units here in the shop. And it's the middle of summer right now, and let me tell you, it is downright chilly here in the shop. So I'm super excited to have this work done, and let's go ahead and get started with the video. The next big step in the shop renovation was to get the new insulation installed in the walls and ceiling. And I went with R30 insulation in the ceiling, which is well above the code requirement of R19 in this area, since this shop is considered an attached garage. Eventually, I'll have the entire attic area insulated as well, so R30 was probably a little overkill, but I figured it'd be worth it since I don't know when I'll have the budget to insulate the huge attic space. The installation crew started by getting the batts installed in the ceiling, and these guys are incredibly fast at their job. And this is the same crew I used at my old shop and in the tiny house, and I highly recommend them if you're in the Asheville area. Thankfully, most of the floor joists were on layout, but in the few areas where the layout was off, the crew used these tiger claws to help hold the batts in place. While part of the crew worked on the ceiling insulation, the spray foam crew got set up for spraying the walls in the shop area and the ceiling in the addition with closed cell spray foam. And they started with the walls, and the first step was to get the floor masked off, as this spray foam will stick to pretty much anything and is next to impossible to remove once it's stuck to something. Once that was done, they got to spraying, and in my case, they were only spraying a fairly thin layer of foam, about 1.5 inches thick, and that's because I went with the flash and batt method of insulating these walls, meaning the crew would be adding a layer of batt insulation on top of the spray foam. I went with flash and batt mainly to save money, since I had enough mineral wool insulation that I'd brought from the old shop to insulate these walls. And the main purpose of the closed cell spray foam in this case was to air and moisture seal the walls, and that's one of the big advantages of closed cell spray foam. Once the walls in the shop were sprayed, they moved to the addition, again starting by getting everything masked off, which was quite the process in and of itself. After masking, they started spraying more closed cell spray foam, and in this case they sprayed a thicker layer at about 3 inches thick, which is about R21, since this would be the only insulation in this ceiling. Closed cell spray foam was one of my only choices here, since I was applying it directly to the underside of the steel roof. For example, if I went with open cell spray foam, the steel would have sweated, with condensation forming on the inside and causing major issues with the open cell foam getting waterlogged. Closed cell foam, while more expensive, is impervious to moisture, so this condensation isn't an issue there. With the spray foam crew's work wrapped up, the mineral wool could be installed on top of the closed cell foam in the shop walls. And I really appreciate the guys doing this for me, as I know working with reused insulation isn't the most fun process, since a lot of the pieces were already cut into shorter sections. Once the mineral wool was installed, the insulation crew called their work done, and the insulation was looking great. There was one other thing to do before calling the insulation totally done though, and that was to come back and add furring strips across the batt insulation in the ceiling. So since I'm going with a drop ceiling in the shop instead of something like drywall, there won't be anything to keep the insulation in place over the years, and without something like these furring strips, it would have the tendency to fall out of the ceiling, which would obviously defeat the purpose of the insulation. Instead of buying furring strips, since I'd need a few hundred of them and they're shockingly expensive right now, I figured I could just rip up a bunch of old material we had pulled out of the space as we demoed the old structures in the shop. And as you can see, the strips help push up against the insulation, and as an added bonus, these will make great places to fasten the electrical wiring to when I get to wiring the shop. And Nate got the entire shop done, and then we could officially call the insulation work complete. Alright guys, so the insulation is in, as you saw, and as you can probably hear, it is super quiet in here. It's always a little shocking every time I get insulation installed, how much of a difference it makes in the space. But everything is looking really good. The temperature is feeling pretty good in here. You know, this shop is kind of half below ground, so even though it's the middle of summer, like 90 degrees outside, it's about 73 in here, which is pretty awesome. One thing though, the humidity is super high. We've had a ton of rain in Asheville this summer. There's also still been a little bit of water getting in through this wall over here. I did have the gutters cleaned, and that has helped a lot with that. But I think between all of that and then also just moisture coming up through the slab, the relative humidity in here was sitting right around 80%, which is way higher than you wanted. Usually, you know, you kind of want in the 50% range. So it's been about a month since the insulation went in, and I came in the shop and started looking around and noticed some weird stuff kind of hanging off some of my shop furniture. And I thought maybe it was just bits of the insulation that had fallen and was kind of hanging, but upon closer inspection, it is mold, and a lot of mold. It is absolutely disgusting. It's showing up on pretty much any unfinished wood in this space. Mold loves unfinished wood. It's an organic material, and so I'm gonna have to do something to deal with this mold. So I've called a local mold remediation company here in Asheville. Definitely a bummer, but I think everything is salvageable. I think I caught it early enough, and I've also had a dehumidifier running over the last couple of days, and that seems to be making a little bit of a dent in the humidity. For this size of space, I really need a commercial dehumidifier, but those things are like $2 grand. And as soon as I get the mini splits installed, which will be pretty soon, I think that's gonna take care of the humidity issue entirely. The mold remediation company came out to give me an estimate, and as expected, the moisture was incredibly high in the space, which led to the mold growth. And the mold remediation company recommended I work on getting the mini splits up and running in the space as soon as possible, as that would help to keep the moisture down and the mold at bay. Because of that recommendation, instead of installing all of the plywood on the shop walls, which was going to be next on my list, I got to work on the mini split installation. So in total, I'm gonna have 2 Mr. Cool multi-zone mini split systems in the shop space. The shop area will have 2 18,000 BTU heads and 1 12,000 BTU head in the CNC room, and the addition and spray booth will each have 18,000 BTU heads in those spaces. And with how well insulated the shop is now, this should make for an extremely comfortable and efficient workspace. Before starting the mini split installation, I did start by installing a few pieces of plywood on the walls since the indoor units would mount on the plywood, but I only installed enough to get the indoor units up. Once that was done, I could start getting the indoor units unboxed and mounted on the wall, and this is a fairly simple process. After unboxing, I figured out where exactly this first indoor unit would be mounted, and these units need to be mounted at least 6 inches below the ceiling, and I made sure to factor in where the drop ceilings would end up when coming up with this location. After laying out the mounting location as well as where the hole for the line set needed to be drilled, I got the mounting bracket installed on the wall, making sure to drive a few of the screws into the studs. Next, it was time to drill the giant hole through the wall, and I pulled out my beast of an SDS Max drill for this. Unfortunately, the 4-inch concrete bit I had didn't really want to cut through the plywood, so I cut the hole with a jigsaw and then got back to drilling. Since I had about 14 inches of wall thickness to drill through between the 8-inch concrete block and 2x6 wall framing, I needed to use a super long bit, and thankfully I had picked up this beast for this project. And I was amazed at how cleanly this bit drilled the hole and couldn't believe really how quickly this process went with the right tool for the job. Next, I could get the unit prepped for mounting, first bending out the line set and then taping the condensate line to the bottom to make sure the condensation would drain properly. Finally, I could feed the communication wire and the line set through the hole, and of course I didn't start my camera for this, but once that was done, the indoor unit just snapped onto the mounting bracket and it was good to go. I repeated the process on the second indoor unit, installing the plywood, attaching the bracket, and drilling the hole. Except this time I wised up and finished drilling the hole from the outside. And this helped to keep the block from blowing out, which kind of happened on the other hole. Also, I'd managed to catch the process of feeding the line set and communication wire through this time, and it would have definitely been helpful to have a second set of hands here. Once that was done, I could get the other half of the included plastic conduit installed outside, and I added some sealant just to help hold this in place. I repeated the process one more time to get the last of the 3 indoor units, which will run off of this outdoor unit installed in the CNC room, and then I could move on to the electrical work. It's getting hot in here. Need to get these mini splits turned on. So anyway, now that I've got the 3 indoor units mounted, now I need to get to wiring the outdoor unit. So I'm gonna start with the electrical. It's raining outside, so I figure I'll do the work I can do inside first. My panel that I'm gonna be running the outdoor unit, the condenser off of, is back here. This 36,000 BTU unit needs a 40 amp circuit, And so I'm going to be using 8-gauge wire, going to be running it through some conduit. And then once I get outside, I'll be transitioning to PVC conduit, so it'll be nice and watertight. So if you're not comfortable with electrical work, definitely hire an electrician to do this. It's fairly simple stuff. This is just a, basic circuit running to one thing. So no weird, three-way switches or anything like that. And I'll kind of show you the whole electrical process here in case you want to try to do this yourself if you're allowed to do it by code in your area. So there was already a partial run of EMT conduit coming from the panel left over from some previous wiring in this space, so I figured I could use that to get a head start on this electrical work. This junction box was directly in my way, so I decided to just drop the conduit a few inches instead of having to bend it around the junction box, and I just worked my way down the wall from there. This was a pretty simple run of conduit since it was almost entirely straight, and I was also able to reuse some of the conduit I salvaged in the previous video in this series, including the bent piece at the end of this run. I drilled a 3/4 inch hole through the concrete block where this conduit needed to run outside, and stuck another old piece of conduit through to allow me to attach a junction box on the other side of the hole. Unfortunately, the block kind of blew out when I drilled it, creating a much larger hole than I needed, so I whipped up a quick mounting block to cover and seal the large hole. And I'll paint this block after wrapping up the installation, and I angled the top edge so water would flow off of it more readily. I attached the block to the concrete with a few Tapcon screws, and then I could work on the junction box. I attached the junction box to the conduit with a compression fitting, which is watertight, but I also added a bunch of silicone around the hole for good measure. I mounted the box to the mounting block with more Tapcons, wiped off the excess silicone, and then added another fitting to the box so I could run 3/4 inch PVC conduit off of it. So this PVC conduit needed to be glued together, which helps to prevent water from getting inside, but also keeps the joints closed up over time. I glued the first length of conduit to the junction box and then worked my way down the wall from there. I attached the conduit to the concrete with these plastic straps, and I'm going to go back and add more straps. I just didn't want to run out before I finished the run. We stopped short of the end of the run so we could get the condenser set in place. And first we leveled out the ground in the area, and of course there was a big root right in our way. After leveling, we added some gravel to the area and then set the plastic pad in place, which is what the condenser will sit on. Finally, we moved the condenser in place, and let me tell you, that thing was not light. Next, I could start getting the line set run to the condenser from the 3 inside units, and this is a fairly simple process. I just needed to be careful not to kink or damage the copper lines while working on them. The line set attaches to the indoor unit with a pair of threaded connections, and it's important to make sure these are threaded on without cross-threading, which can lead to leaks. After getting the line set attached to the indoor unit, I could attach the other end to the condenser, which was the same process. Next, I ran the communication wire to the condenser and connected the wires to the terminals, all of which are very clearly labeled. And the communication wire provides power to the indoor units, but also allows the remote to control the outdoor unit through the wire. I repeated the process on the next indoor unit, and this unit ended up close to 50 feet from the condenser. And since the longest available length of these DIY line sets from Mr. Cool is 25 feet, I needed to splice 2 line sets together using the coupler kit from Mr. Cool. This was simple and just required some more wrenching, tying the 2 line sets together with the coupler. Before connecting this longer line set to the condenser, I wanted to take some of the slack out of the line, so I went ahead and attached the line set to the wall temporarily. And I will be installing Mr. Cool's line set covers to tidy everything up, but this worked in the meantime. Once that was done, I got the line set attached to the condenser and repeated the process for the last indoor unit, and then I could open up all of the valves to check for leaks. So these lines are pre-charged with refrigerant, so it's really ideal to check for leaks along the way, but it's absolutely critical to check for leaks after opening these valves on the condenser, as that allows more of the refrigerant to flow into the lines. I used this gas leak solution to check the connections, both at the condenser and where the line set connected to the indoor units, and thankfully I had no leaks. I repeated the process on the other connections and then opened the king valves last, which released all of the refrigerant, and checked for leaks one more time, and once again, I had no leaks, so I could replace the cover and call it a day. I started the following day by getting the electrical wire run to the outdoor unit, but first I needed to tie together the conduit I had run previously. I used a pulling elbow here, which made it simple to connect the two pieces of EMT, and after cutting the EMT pieces to length, I also made sure to deburr the ends with this conduit reamer. Once everything was connected, I needed to run some fish line through the conduit so I could pull the wire through, and I tried to use the trick I learned from my electrician using a shop vac to pull the line through. Unfortunately, this didn't want to work for some reason, but thankfully I was able to push one piece of the 8-gauge wire through by hand, there we go, then pull the fish line back through using the wire. Back at the panel, I taped the fish line to the 3 wires, 2 hots and a ground in this case, and then started pulling them through the conduit. This was a pretty tiring pull since half-inch conduit was definitely on the verge of too small in this case, but I used a conduit fill calculator app to determine that it should work, and thankfully it did. After the wire came out the other end, I continued pulling more wire through, enough to reach the condenser outside, and then I could head outside to start pulling the wire through the junction box out back.
Yep, ready to feed. There we go.
Also, I got this little roller plate attachment, which keeps the insulation on the wire from getting damaged, and with that installed, I got the wire pulled through easily. Before pulling the wire through the PVC conduit, I needed to finish the run to the outdoor unit, starting by installing a service disconnect. And these are required by code, so a service technician can quickly kill the power to the unit if they need to work on it. I'll also need to add a 120 volt outlet near this unit as well, so the technician will have power to do their work. I got the service disconnect mounted to the wall, and then ran a whip from the disconnect to the condenser to finish the conduit run. And I bought this pre-made whip, which really simplified things since the wire and fittings were all included. I also added some strain reliefs to the communication wires so they can't be accidentally pulled out of the condenser. Once that was done, I could finally pull the wire through the PVC conduit, and of course, since there's no outlet out back here, the shop vac trick wasn't super helpful. I tried pushing the wire through by hand, and unfortunately it got snagged right near the end of the run, so I had Nate run over to my house to grab my fish wire. And the fish wire was barely long enough, with about 6 inches to spare, but after taping the fish wire to the electrical wires, we were able to pull everything through.
That's good.
I put the cover plate on the junction box to close that up, and then I could wire the service disconnect, fighting off a small army of bugs as I worked lying on the ground. Once that was done, I could get the wires connected to the new 40 amp breaker back in the panel. Also, as you might have noticed, my wire colors were a little funky here, and this is because these are the only colors I could find in stock locally. To clearly indicate the correct color, I wrapped the black wire in green tape since it was my ground, and wrapped the white wire in black tape since it was one of my 2 hots. Finally, I got everything wired to the breaker and could flip it on.
Hey, I'm about to flip it on, so just I guess maybe go back by the outdoor unit and let's make sure nothing happens. Oh.
After scratching my head for a few minutes, I realized I had wired the service disconnect incorrectly, and after fixing that, I could try the breaker again.
Please, please. Yes!
And thankfully, it didn't trip this time, so I could test out the indoor units. As expected, they fired right up, and after testing both the heating and cooling, I could get these wireless mini stats mounted on the wall to wrap everything up. And these are a newer option for Mr. Cool and are super handy as they give you a ton of info and control with no wiring as they're battery powered. With that, I could call the mini split install a wrap, at least until I get to the other 2 units once the spray booth is cleared out.
Whew, it is actually chilly here in the shop. I am really excited to have the mini splits in. As you can see, we've also been hard at work getting the rest of the plywood up on the walls. By we, I mean me and the Perkins crew. So if you guys don't want to miss the video on that and the rest of the videos in this series, go ahead and get subscribed and ring the notification bell. Also, as always, I'll have links to all the tools and materials I use down in the video description below. And last, if you want to support me and support this whole shop project, I sell merch. I have plans available for a lot of my woodworking projects, and I also have both Patreon and YouTube members set up, so go check out one of those things. All right, thanks for watching, y'all, and until next week, happy building.